Hi guys, today we're gonna visit Jesus, His Religion lecture by Alan Watts. Alan Watts attempts to explain a different approach towards Christianity and the figure of Jesus Christ and the vast implications that it has. First, he explains where does the authority of the church about the story of Jesus comes from, which in this case is the Holy Bible, so we'll go there first. For Watts, the four original Gospels were to be regarded as historical documents, meaning that they recollect truthful information about Jesus and his life, including the Gospel of St. John. People thought that the Gospel of St. John was written around 125 AD, but the local scholar, his knowledge about the topography of Jerusalem, and his knowledge of the Jewish calendar is more accurate than the other three Gospels. For Watts, it was easier to assume that John recorded the inner teachings, the esoteric ones, and that Matthew, Mark, and Luke wrote the more exoteric teachings which he gave to people at large. Now, what about the authority of these scriptures? A big group of people actually don't know how we got the Bible. For a lot of them, the King James Version is the original, untouched version. This is not the case. The Bible has a way older origin. Westerners got the Bible from the Catholic Church. The Church and its members wrote the books of the New Testament, and they took over the books of the Old Testament as well. The books to be included in the New Testament were not decided upon until the year 382 AD at the Synod of Rome with Pope Damasus. It was the Catholic Church that promulgated the Bible. Historically then, we received the Bible on the Church's say-so, insisting that the Church, speaking under the presumed guidance of the Holy Spirit, has the sole authority to interpret the Bible, and you can take that or you can leave it. The authority of the Bible, of course, is not based on the Bible itself. Anyone can write a Bible and state that it is the Word of God. Hindus believe that the Vedas are divinely revealed. Muslims believe that the Quran is divinely inspired. The Japanese believe that the ancient texts of Shinto are of divine origin, and who's to be judged? So if the Church says the Bible is true, it finally comes down to you. Are you going to believe them or not? If nobody believes the Church, it will be perfectly clear that they have no authority, because people are always the source of authority. Some people will say God himself is the authority, but there is no evidence for that. It remains, until there is evidence, simply an opinion, and there is nothing else to go on, except the opinion of other people that hold the same opinion as you and whose opinion you bought. Watts then moves to explain that he does agree that there is a sense in which the Bible is divinely inspired. Inspiration means something utterly different from dictation, meaning receiving a dictated message from an omniscient authority. Inspiration comes very seldomly in words, and since inspiration always comes from a human vehicle, it is liable to be distorted by that vehicle. Here, Watts uses a perfect example to clarify this point. During his lecture, he was talking through a microphone and a sound system. Now, if there was anything wrong with the microphone or the sound system, whatever truths Watts was communicating through them would become distorted, and people would have mistaken them or mistaken the meaning of what he said. The same thing happens with divinely inspired people. They will express their message within the limits of the language that they know. And by language, Watts didn't mean only Hebrew, Hindu, English, but the terms and ideas that are available to the person, the type of religion, culture, society, concepts that were available to you and that you were brought up with. If you were born within the Bible Belt and a version of Christianity was all you ever knew, and you had a mystical experience of the type where you discover union with existence, for example, then you will find yourself in the situation in which your language will only be able to express this experience as, I am Jesus Christ, and lots of people do. What happened? This person was trying to explain his personal experience in terms of what he knows within his own spiritual tradition, in terms of a religious language which is circumscribed by the Bible. There is no other way in which he can express this. If he had read the Upanishads, for example, he and his culture would have had no problem or difficulty with understanding what he was trying to say when he said, I'm Jesus. Because, for example, in the Upanishads, it is said that we are all incarnations of God, only they don't mean God as we understand it. They mean the Brahman, a supra-personal, all-inclusive view of the divine. For more about this, check out my previous video. We are all in the nature of God, or how you would express it in Hebrew or Arabic, a son of God, a human being who has realized union with God. The word son of means in the nature of, as when you call somebody a son of a bitch, ibn ibn Kalb, which means son of a dog. A son of Belial also means, for example, an evil person. Watts' assumption then was that Jesus was a human being like Buddha and Sri Ramana Krishna like Ramana Maharshi, that early in his life had a colossal experience of what we would call cosmic consciousness. which is an overwhelming conviction that you have mistaken your identity. What you thought was just you was only completely superficial. That I is really an expression of an eternal something that can be named, and that I suddenly understand why, exactly why, everything is the way that it is. It becomes perfectly clear. And if you have a name, a concept in the background, you will say, this happening is God, or the will of God, or the doing of God. Or, it is the flowing of the Tao. Or if you're a Hindu, you will say, it is the Maya of a Brahman. So let's suppose then that Jesus had such an experience. But Jesus has the limitation that he doesn't know any religion other than those of the immediate Near East. Now, therefore, if Jesus were to come right out and say, I am the Son of God, that's like saying I'm the boss's son, or I am the boss, which would be blasphemy. That is trying to introduce democracy in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus, in his exoteric teaching, was pretty cagey about this. He didn't come out and say, I and the Father are one. Instead, he identified himself with the Messiah described in the second part of the prophet Isaiah. But to his elect disciples, as recorded in St. John, he came right out and said, before Abraham was, I am. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the living bread that comes down from heaven. I and the Father are one, and he who has seen me has seen the Father. And there cannot be mistaken in that language. So the Jews found out and had him put to death for blasphemy. Now, what happened? The apostles didn't quite get the point. They worshipped him as people do worship gurus, and the Christians eventually said, okay, well, Jesus of Nazareth was the Son of God, but nobody else. So what happened was that Jesus was pedestalized. He was put in a position that was safely upstairs from everybody else so that his troublesome experience of cosmic consciousness would not cause other people to be a nuisance. If you pedestalize Jesus, you strangle the gospel at birth. Gospel means good news. But the church's version is that we're supposed to follow Jesus' life and example without having the unique advantage of being the boss's son. We're asked to follow the example of a perfect, mighty, powerful, miracle-creating, resurrecting, capable being when we're only an imperfect and ordinary one. We're delivered a gospel which is in fact an impossible religion, and we create a peculiar dynamic. Many Christians have admitted it. You will always be aware of your shortcomings, and so the more shortcomings you feel, the more, in other words, you are aware of the vast abyss between Christ and yourself. So Christianity ended up institutionalizing guilt as a virtue. This is the Christianity of most people, what's called fundamentalist forms of Catholicism and Protestantism. What would the real gospel be then? The real good news is not simply that Jesus of Nazareth was the Son of God, but that he was a powerful Son of God who came to open everybody else's eyes to the fact that you are too a Son of God. This is perfectly clear in the 10th chapter of St. John, in the verse 30, where Jesus says, I and the Father are one, in front of a group of people, and they immediately pick up stones to stone him. Jesus asks, many good works I have shown you from the Father, and for which one of these do you stone me? People replied, for a good work we stone you not, but for blasphemy, because you being a man make yourself God. And he replied, isn't it written in your law, I have said you are gods? If God called those whom he gave his word gods, and you cannot deny the scriptures, how can you say I blaspheme because I said I am a son of God? And there's the whole thing in a nutshell. Of course, in the King James Version of the Bible, you will see italics in front of the words Son of God. The Son of God, because I said I am the Son of God. And most people think that those italics are for emphasis. They are not. The italics indicate words interpolated by translators. You will not find that in the Greek version of the Bible. The Greek one says a Son of God, not the Son of God. Jesus then has got it in the back of his mind that this is not something peculiar or unique to himself. So when he says, I am the way, no man comes to the Father but by me, this I am, this me, is the divine in all of us. In Hebrew, it would be called the Ruach Adonai. The Ruach is the divine in the creature by virtue of which we are sons of, or of the nature of, God, manifestations of the divine. This discovery is the gospel. That is the good news. But this has been perpetually repressed throughout history by Western religion, because Western religions, especially Catholicism and Christianity, became forms of celestial hierarchical monarchies. Therefore, they have discouraged what would be called democracy in their kingdom of heaven. That is the idea that we are all incarnations of the divine, we are all equal. If then we can see that Jesus speaks not from the situation of a historical and unique, weird, extraordinary event, but just as a voice which joins with other voices that have said in every place and time, wake up man and realize who you are, then we understand the message better. Watts said that the Bible was a dangerous book, and that to worship it was far more dangerous idolatry than bowing down to images of wood and stone, because nobody can confuse a wooden image with God, but you can very easily confuse a set of ideas with God, because concepts are more rarefied and abstract. Some institutions say about a religion or a spiritual path isn't necessarily accurate, truthful, or the same as the original message. It is our responsibility to always look critically at whatever information comes our way. Okay, that's it. That was Jesus' Religion lecture by Alan Watts. Thanks for watching.